This is Zettelcast, brought to you by readers, writers, thinkers, and teachers from LiLLiPub, along with our partners in thought, our Zettelcastans. In this show, we share discoveries that our Zettelcastans have shown us.
There you go.
And compare notes on how we're using this marvelous invention in our creative work. Thank you for joining us.
All right, Brooke.
Do it again.
All right.
Episode 89. Where's the fun in virtue? Welcome everyone to Zettelcast, episode 89. Where's the fun in virtue? So this is an invitation to my Roanoke co-authors to fill out some Roanoke world building through the lens of character. And it follows immediately on our discussion last week about authors who are much more tuned to character-driven stories, and how I have, in my approach to this story, I have created a world, and now we're, populating it and seeing how it works. But how do your characters influence this world? So where's the fun in virtue? So imagine the residents of Lydia, this planet of Roanoke, being given the challenge, where's the fun in virtue? And under what circumstances might a character encounter the challenge? What does that character understand they're meant to do with it? How do they reach that understanding, and how self-aware are they of that? How will they respond? How will their responses be assessed? And so we're going to do this in 2 rounds. The first round should be quick. And it's just for us to kind of get on the same page with each other and with all of you. Well, what is virtue? So we're going to share a card that summarizes a foundational reference for virtue that we're using for this. And then round 2 will be more filled out, where we share cards and whatever other props and everything that help us give an overview of our intent for a scene, maybe share as much of that scene as we have time and inspiration to do so. And one thing as I was writing out this challenge for my castmates was, we're not boiling the entire ocean here of virtue. It's a topic that has occupied the great minds for some time. So I intend to really just focus on 1 or 2. So that's what we're doing today. Who would like to start the round of foundational references for virtue?
I can.
Okay.
Okay. And because I teach about the character traits, where the character traits summarize the whole number line, if you will, from virtue to vice. If you're going to be a fiction writer, you can't just totally talk about virtue. You have to have the whole range. And when you have the whole range, it's a character trait. But they are basically the virtues. So that's my global. And then for my characters, both of my characters are struggling with circumspection. And circumspection involves seeing, and there are 3 elements to that seeing that our characters have to embody for them to fully possess the virtue of circumspection. And one of them is the range of vision. How much do you see? The second one is how carefully do you see? Do you really look at all of the aspects? And the third one is, with what spirit do you see? Are you seeing with the spirit of curiosity, or are you looking with the spirit of fear? And only when you are looking free from fear, looking fully, and looking intently enough, do you fully have circumspection.
Well, that was phenomenally concise and full. Terrific.
Cheated.
Yeah, I know. Who's next?
Well, I don't know how to. Well, that's a tough act to follow. But let me do what I can. And I came away with that virtue is congruence. And that is when we're talking about congruence, we're talking about the inside versus the outside of one's way of life. So it's not something you can go to the grocery store and buy and bring back in a sack. Like my grandmother used to talk about. She said that my aunt asked her whether or not she could bring happiness back home. You know, she could when she went to the store because she put it in the sack and bring it back home. Anyway, that's a family lore there. But the idea is that's not something you can do with virtue because it's something that has to be maintained. And we're talking about examining one's life as you move along to make certain that you are living a congruent life and you're not, just talking out of the side of your mouth, kind of thing. So
Beautiful. All right. Who's next?
I can go. Um, this one, I had to sit with this one for a while, but because it just felt so big. But then as I started looking at it, not only in the context of my character, but in the context of something else that I'm working on, um, which is developing a curriculum for a slow read of Paradise Lost and how to Zettelcast in that, all of a sudden it totally clicked that I'm working in the same area just for different reasons. So I started, and I don't know why this is where my mind went, probably because I'm reading critical theory about manifestations of evil in early modern English poetry. So the first place I went was to the seven deadly sins. I thought, okay, that's not going to fit. So I started thinking about what would that look like for my character. And first I thought, well, I'm interested in the four cardinal virtues. And so that's where my card started, was with prudence, justice, fortitude, and temperance. And I started thinking about how does that fit? And then all of a sudden, like lightning, it all just kind of zapped together. And the way that it played out was I started thinking about Margaret's circumstance and her challenge, and how going through the communications that happen over the course of the visitations, without saying too much, she comes to terms. And what that ended up meaning was that changed my viewpoint to faith, hope, and charity with a focus on faith and hope. Because what I basically discovered in this process is faith and hope become personified, at least in her perception of what she's experiencing with these communications. And that clicked another kind of virtue into place, which I'll share in the next segment, the next round. But her perception of getting a grip on herself and bringing herself out of this kind of self-imposed exile all becomes distilled when not only faith and hope, but the other part two virtue lock into place. And to steal a cliff note from Kathleen's presentation, it kind of is locked in with circumspection, I think. And that only just occurred to me when Kathleen said what she said, but I think that's another piece that undergirds her being able to make this transformation and step out of where she's been and back into really accepting faith and hope again, because those were things that she basically locked away So, so that,
Yeah. So far, everything sounds like the makings of fun. Um,
yeah, yeah. It's
at
and
least
for
fun for the
the
authors, and if it's fun for
yeah,
us.
right, right. Yeah. Well, it's just it's a not allowing yourself because you don't feel deserving, you don't feel worthy, or you are just carrying this weight of guilt as a result of the things that happened. The journey back to finding the fun, that's the thing that holds all of it together is recognizing that you deserve it, that it's needed, and then getting yourself there.
Super. All right, Mel.
All right. Well, my card is actually kind of coincidentally, I just made this card back in December, which I guess is actually 6 months ago, but it doesn't feel like 6 months ago. Um, because virtue was something that I had been struggling with when meditating through the Lillian attributes. Virtue is one of them. And on the one hand, you've got the Christian virtues, which I'm familiar with. But on the other hand, you have usage like, the virtue of this plant is that it helps with headaches, or, so I'm like, well, I couldn't quite find the connecting. Um, but John Michael Greer came to my rescue. I wasn't even the one who asked the question. Somebody else asked the question about virtue and vice, and he gave such a clear, concise definition that I'm like, this works for me. So I'm just going to quote it. I wrote it down. He said, the word vice comes from Latin vitium, literally weakness, just as virtue comes from virtus, which literally means manly strength. It's from the same root as virility. Your vices are your weaknesses, the things that make it easier for others to dominate and exploit you. Your virtues are your strengths, the things that enable you to meet challenges and accomplish your will. And so there's some value judgments there, right? What is strong, what is weak? Those are value judgments, which can differ depending on the person and their context. But um, you know, I don't think that there are necessarily set virtues that are universal. Like an oak tree has a virtue of being very strong. A willow tree has a virtue of being very supple. They're both they both are good at what they do, and that is their virtue, their particular traits. And a willow can't try to be stronger, and oak can't try to be more supple. So what I'm getting at here is that I did consider going with some of like the cardinal virtues as was discussed, but in the case of my character Javi, I was thinking of what makes him strong and what makes him weak, and those were the questions that I was asking for this.
Right. Okay. Um, bringing up the rear, I have two foundational references. One is the five basic precepts from Buddhism, which are akin to the Ten Commandments. They are about what not to do in many cases, right? So, but I said there are two. One is that, and then how I am translating them in my own interpretation to the character traits that Kathleen has so well explained. So the five basic precepts, I'm not. It's basically a non-harming of others doctrine. And the precepts are taken by adherents of Buddhism. These five are for non-monks. The monks have a huge list. But one of the ones that I am focusing on is I undertake to refrain from false speech, harmful speech, gossip, and slander. And what I wanted to bring out in this episode and with my co-authors is that I have already in the stories that I have written featuring Jenna and her cohort of people around her age, they refrain from gossip. And there are times that they will talk about somebody who's not there, and they're very aware that they're doing that, and they're very aware of a sense of a proper limit. And then the question for me in thinking about my own question for this episode was, how did they get there? So I'll talk about that in the next round. But that's my underpinning.
You said a
Oh.
mouthful there, sister. Nice. Way to launch a rocket without even loading it up. I love it.
All right. So, Kathleen, do you want to go first in round two? So, as a reminder, basically, we're leaning towards story. If you've written story, awesome. If you're just planning story, just share what you've got.
Okay, so as I mentioned, the character trait, the virtue that I'm working on is circumspection, and it's one of the insight character traits, which is how characters see the world around them. The interesting thing about my two main characters that I've been working on lately are Teresita and Helen, who are only now coming into each other's world. The interesting thing about it is that both of them are having circumspection suddenly moving into the rudder position. They are unaware of it. So one of the story's questions was, how did they find out about this challenge? And their response would be, what challenge? Is anybody looking at challenges? Where does one find challenges? They're both their circumspection is both primarily failing in scope. One of those three things that they fail in is scope. Teresita is also has a problem of spirit. She's very comfortable with an incredibly tight, it's almost like a bubble around her head. Her circumspection is so limited that whenever she climbs out from under the table or under a staircase, she immediately feels fear. So she's only comfortable in this incredibly small sphere. That's why she was able to discover things like the ability to pop up the tiles, the floor tiles, if you remember an older one, because she was looking at things just so microscopically close in. But she's very good at looking at intensely. That's how she was able to experiment around and discover how to pop the tiles. So she of the three, she's very good at looking at all sides of things, incredibly too tight in scope. And when she steps out of that scope, fear just dominates. Helen is having the same problem, but doesn't realize it. Helen built her bubble around her, was basically, she was going to build a microcosm of planet Earth and take it with her to Lydia. She did that intentionally, deliberately. And Freddie had even encouraged her because that was the only way he was going to get her to come along. And he wanted to go. So he was one of the beta testers of the game. So she deliberately built this bubble, which worked fine all the while she was raising her children. Freddie was never totally in her bubble. Well, he had a job. Of course, he was out of the bubble. But the kids, gradually, as they get older, the youngest now is in the later grades of high school, and the other two are older than that, and they're just not so much in that little bubble of hers anymore. They're all Lydians. And so she is consciously aware of the need to expand her bubble. So it's consciously in her rudder position. She isn't very much dominated by fear. She would swear she isn't. But she would just say she's uncomfortable in unfamiliar situations. And she doesn't, that's not a dominating fear, but it's still fear. Come on, that's fear. You're not looking at things with curiosity. And she's always had a little bit of a toehold in Freddie's world because even though she was never into gaming, and he always was in group activities, she was really big on refreshments. And having a person who's big on refreshments is always welcome in the gaming
Yes,
world.
you betcha.
So she was always a tangential part. But what's interesting about her, she knows she wants to widen her world. She doesn't realize it's circumspection. She wouldn't be able to label it, but it is coming, definitely in the rudder for her. What's brought it into the rudder for Teresita is communication with Bala. She's let Bala come into her inner world. And it's going to turn out that that's a very wide world indeed. He goes off planet because he's on a rocket ship. I mean, on a ship unable to get back to Lydia. So her world is busting out. Plus, with the Bezier belt and whatever got her connected with Helen, her ability to confine herself to her small world is shattering. The interesting thing is that when you say, well, who finds out about the game? Helen is going to see Teresita making progress
Mm.
in laying down her fears, and entering the world. And Teresita's success is going to inspire Helen, who didn't have anywhere near as much of a problem. Well, she thought she didn't, but her boundaries were so rigid that she literally had the exact same problem that Teresita had, just a bigger bubble. So she didn't realize it. And seeing Teresita break out of it is going to give her the courage to break out of it. And that's where the fun is going to come in. Breaking out of a confine that's just so tightly binding one is, especially when the boundaries are fear-filled.
Yeah.
Letting go of that and seeing the real world, that's fun. Fun in a great and glorious, liberating way.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, so I guess in order, that means me. Okay. In listening to you specifically, Kathleen, and picking out the character trait of circumspection, I realized that this pairing that I made, virtue and congruence, is circumspection. It's circumspection. And I'm saying, okay, all right. And my character is Gigi Jameson.
Ah, welcome back, Gigi.
Yeah. And Gigi, those who've been following know that Gigi was a born peacemaker. And also the winningest men's basketball coach in the country. And who was also walking around with a necklace that said it ain't easy being green. This was a necklace tattoo. And most people who looked at it thought he was, tongue-in-cheeking it, but that wasn't it. He's a Black man who looks white with dreads. So it's and bow legs and short. But he's a basketball phenom or basketball coaching phenom. Anyway, the point is, he was lonely. And in the course of trying to figure out what's going on with himself, he with the help of a couple of other characters, decided that maybe he should look at what he's doing. And he began to see the difference between what he felt like he was obligated to do in terms of people coming to him and asking for help, depending on him, XYZ and ABC and whatever have you, and him saying yes, 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 and becoming more and more burdened by this. So with the help of her name is Rosie Two M's. With the help of Rosie Two M's, he was able to begin to not reject people, but put boundaries around himself and what he felt was correct to do. And so the fun was in this daily examination, this constant examination of where he is, where he was, and where he intended to be, and why. Why? So the fun was in the journey. The fun was in the journey of reconciling his insides and his and the outside, making sure that there was, we were locked arms, and not because we were pulling on each other, but because we were a team. My inside and my outside. We're one. So that's Gigi. And the idea of incongruence, that's the gap between what's inside and what's outside. And you examine the gap. And it's all about Socrates, who said an unexamined life is not worth living. And the idea of him saying that at his trial is the thing that's reverberating all around in my head, right behind this question. Because they gave him an opportunity to go and be exiled. They said, okay, if you just stop asking people questions, you can go. We won't kill you. But if you insist upon continuing to ask questions, you got to go, guy. And he said, yeah, well, I'm gone, because an unexamined life is not worth living. So there it is.
All
Nice.
right.
Okay.
Just Deb and Kathleen, you're signaling I'm done now. If you had any story to share that you've actually written,
No.
you do that too. But this was kind of a monster of a challenge, so it's fine.
You think?
Yeah.
All right, Victoria.
Okay, so picking up where I left off, we started with the 7 deadly sins. We transitioned over to the 4 cardinal virtues, which then led to faith and hope. And that led me down the road then, since we're talking about character development, and I have to be careful because I don't want to say too much, but how do I want to represent Margaret's interaction with these virtues? And I want them to be personified so that there's a dialogue, and that's part of the fun. That's part of finding the fun, is learning to communicate with the things, like if you could sit down with Faith and have a conversation, how freaking cool would that be? So I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, let's lean into that. So that's the direction that's going to go. Because originally they were the visitations exclusively with Dylan. And I don't think that serves enough character development. I think that's a piece of it. And I think it kind of helps to develop the idea of, am I going crazy? Am I talking with someone? Am I not talking with someone? Is there anybody else here? So those are all pieces of how that will develop.
Yeah.
Which the cool thing is, of course, we have, and I don't want to say too much, but we have this this world that knows more than we think it does. So that there's kind of that element out here. So then, in terms of how do the vices, or excuse me, how do the idea of virtue, how does it play out? And for me, what I arrived at is, it's the struggle between eutrapelia and fortitude and the vices of fear and despair. So let me break that down a little. So Eutropelia is a cheerful pleasantness that keeps the soul from being overburdened or fully in despair in a way that it can't recover or change.
Mm.
So that provides the gravity of what she's going through. And the vehicle then is fortitude, because she has to learn how to really grab onto fortitude as a method of traversing the fear so that she can get to the other side. And it's the personified hope and faith in the middle that provide the levity that allow her to kind of laugh at herself and say, you know, I am a big dumb goon, and that's okay. So that's what that journey looks like. And I can't thank you enough. When I first read this challenge, I was like, are you freaking kidding me? What the hell? And that's literally what I said out loud. And then I started thinking, okay, I love Julianne and I respect her mind so much. I'm like, get out of your own way and just sit with the question. And then that's what led me down the road of just penciling out what might this look like. And I think the value of, you know, like you said, you can't boil the whole ocean, but I think the value of assigning your writerly self something that just seems so big and crazy, and just letting that creative part of you sit with it, out of nowhere, you start tugging threads and they start coming together. And then whether you're packing it into plot, you're packing it into character, you know, setting whatever thing bucket that you can start tucking those things into, suddenly it gels into something and you come out the other side. And then you can decide, do I want to lean into this because it's working and it's a path I can follow? Or did this maybe reveal a problem or stuckness or something that, not so much, that's the journey that I went on. I jettisoned prudence, justice, and temperance, but I knew fortitude. Didn't know how or why, but I knew. And then once I followed it to its natural end, it all gelled into a very defined character arc. So well done. Even though my first reaction was not well done. Trust the stew. Trust the stew.
Well, now we've learned something. If we don't occasionally hit Victoria with "Are you freaking kidding me?" we're not trying hard enough.
Appreciate.
So the scene that I have already drafted, and I think that I don't necessarily need to read it here, but I can just share the cards around them and talk in the way that we have. And then I want to also share a bit of world building that I came up with over the last few days to see, well, how did this...
Mel,
Hmm?
It's
Mel.
okay. We don't have to go in order.
Oh, pardon me. My goodness. My goodness.
You just got started.
Yeah.
Continue on
I'm
a
sorry.
roll.
Just go for
Sorry
it.
about that. All right. So there is an awkward conversation at the fire pit that happens when Jenna accompanies Sonny to his neighborhood that's called the Enclave. The Enclave has a fire pit. I've discussed it in previous things, and this is it's the topic of the conversation is Millie's death and life.
Mhm.
And but the subtext of Dee, who is Sonny's mother, with the subtext of her withdrawal from all these people looms large. Um, One of the things that happens there is an insensitive person at this enclave just blurts out the fact that, wow, congratulations, Sonny, you're a homeowner. And he's like, what? Turns out that he's inherited Millie's home, and they gave they just decide, whoever did this just decided, I'm just gonna barge in here, and it's kind of disrespectful of Dee and Sonny, really. It's like, yeah, okay. So that's an uncomfortable thing. And Jenna, having just met all these people, the only person that she knows is Sonny. And then there's this other guy named Fugly that both Sonny and Jenna have met just a couple days earlier. And it turns out, wow, Fugly lives in Sonny's neighborhood. Imagine that. Um, so Sonny learns, wow, Fugly and Dee know each other. Huh. During this tension convention around the fire pit, Jenna observes a moment where there's just a quick interaction between Fugly and Dee where he soothes her.
Ah.
And it's a moment that's between them, but Jenna observes it. Then Sonny and Dee go back to their house. Jenna's about to leave, and the people there who remain there, some people wander off, but the people who remain say, hey, join our retro. We're going to have a retro. So a retro is a retrospective. This is an exercise in circumspection. Hello. It's communal. It's like, well, here's what I saw. What did you see? What did we just do? How'd that go? And she brings some perspective that they haven't gotten in a while, having to do with the showing of respect. And even the showing of respect toward this thing called the retro. Because how can you have a retro when Dee and Sonny just wandered off and those other guys are gone? What's up with that? So that is what happens in that story. And the one little invention that I came up with is like, well, okay, so Jenna has somehow, and her cohort, as we're seeing, they have somehow got respect in their base trait or their anchor, at least. They're very respectful of each other, of people they just met, very just naturally, intuitively respectful. How'd they get there? And so this is a bit of biology that they're exposed to in Lydia. And they're called empathy plants. And these plants are taught to map sense that they emit to emotional states of the people around them. So if you think about the fact that people will say, you know, dogs can smell fear. Dogs can smell more than fear. We just, when we're afraid of a dog, we really focus on that, but they can smell lots of stuff, right? So there are these plants, and they map sense that they emit to emotional states. So states of ease and goodwill smell pleasantly, but not overwhelmingly sweet, like a hint of vanilla or jasmine. States of dis-ease smell foul, with scents mapped distinctly to the vice end of the virtue and vice continuum. So there's a particular smell of disrespect. During the developmental years, when children are highly prone to peer pressure, their learning environments are loaded with these plants. So you walk into a room and you smell disrespect, hostility, right. These things. And you got a link that's working and can help you recall that bundle of experience too. It can help you recall the words and the smell and the feeling inside yourself.
Oh. So they're conditioned, operant conditioning.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And my working biological hypothesis is we could smell fear too. We could smell all the things that the dogs smell if we hadn't conditioned ourselves not to. Can you imagine an alien from another planet that has a very good sense of smell coming in and smelling us and thinking, you all stink. It's
Ooh.
quite possible. Because, there's been a lot in modern life of just like covering up our smell.
Mhm.
Mm.
Mm.
Boy, there's a lot to unpack there. This is great. This is fantastic. It's exactly what I was talking about in my newsletter when I said bring all of those senses in because it makes it not only richer for the reader, but selfishly, it really stretches you as a writer. I mean, that's just, woo, that's powerful stuff, which is why
And
we do
what
what Julianne does.
and what if we do that in our story to do what Julianne said was done to the kids? What if we operantly condition our readers based on the sense we give them? I
Yeah.
sure do love this book.
It's like a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
All right, Mel.
All right. Well, so in asking the question of what makes Javi strong and what makes him weak, he's one of his big strengths is finding patterns, seeing patterns. He doesn't realize that this is a strength. He doesn't realize that not everybody can do this. He assumes that everybody else can, and that what he sees is just what everybody sees, because he has a tendency towards isolation. And so he, the isolation both, that's one of his weaknesses. It both keeps him from realizing that he even has a strength, and it also keeps him from getting enough information to find the patterns in. And so I've been, over the course of the last number of prompts, I've been working on moving him away from the isolation and trying to maneuver him into getting into contact with Jenna's group as sort of the most cohesive group of people that we've met, so that he can go out and experience a lot of different ways of seeing the world, a lot of different information that he has never encountered, and also to experience the feedback when he comes up with some pattern understanding of them going, whoa, we never thought of it that way. And he's going to, he doesn't expect this, but he's going to find that this is actually fun. Um, and how I'm going to maneuver him into this situation, I haven't figured that out yet. But kicking and screaming, he will socialize.
You will have fun. Wow. Yeah. Well, that's all of this is really exciting. I can't wait to read what everybody has going. Um, thank you all for getting over whatever hurdles the wording of the challenge might have presented for you, and to see the fun in that is possible. I mean, to me, whoever these ancestors are who created Lydia, we're discovering their vision for how can you have a world that celebrates curiosity and not idle curiosity, really, the kind of curiosity that I think, well, circumspection is not something that you ever nail because the world is infinitely unfolding, right?
Mhm.
It's more like you develop a congruent stance. and people around you develop a congruent stance and help you have one, right? So that is, yeah, I think that's what we're discovering here together.
If you want to find us, we're at LiLLiPub.org. Notice the two L's in the middle. They're capitalized for a reason. LiLLiPub.org. And it's a great place where we hang out when we're not here in YouTube land. We talk about our project. There's a wonderful growing community here. If you love Victoria's book, and who couldn't, you're going to see a great community of people who are just getting very excited about her book and her projects. Mel's starting to get a book club going. Deb has a secret project that she's going to be launching soon. And Julianne's Roanoke is very lively over there. So come on to LiLLiPub.org.
Thank you, Kathleen. Bye, everyone.
Bye.